So here we're going to start taking a look at a variety of squares and both traditional and non-traditional items for squaring, as well as center finders. Let me clear this off and we'll start looking at the individual pieces. So we're going to start with what's known as an engineer or a machinist square. This is a fixed square. These are usually highly accurate. They can be used for machine alignment as well as marking and measuring layouts. Now I have two different brands here. I have a Brown and Sharpe. These came in a set of 3, and then I also have a Grizzly over here, which came in a set of something like 5, 6, or 7, so there were quite a few in there. These come from anywhere from really small 2-inch units on up to very large, much larger than this. Now I did a comparison between the Brown and Sharpe, which the Brown and Sharpes come in with a certificate of accuracy. So they're measured, they're guaranteed within a certain accuracy over their entire length or over a distance per 6 inches, and they are very highly accurate. Now what I did was, I'm just laying these out flat on the surface plate, but when I actually did the comparison, I used the surface plate and I put the two squares together like that, and then I put a feeler gauge in to see if I could get a feeler gauge in at any point along the square. That gave me an idea of the accuracy of these, which I couldn't get my smallest feeler gauge in. Then out of curiosity, I took one of the Grizzlies and I did the same thing with the Grizzly and checked with the feeler gauge. And actually, to my surprise, the Grizzly was just as accurate as the Brown and Sharpe, at least in a comparison test between the two. Now your mileage may vary on the Grizzlies, what's made this week versus next week, things along those lines. You don't get any guarantees or stated accuracies that I've seen on the Grizzly, whereas on the Brown and Sharpes you do. So you might want to get at least 1 or 2 brand name guaranteed accurate units, and then you can use that to compare against some generic or cheaper ones if you so wish. Now the use of these squares is really quite simple. We simply set it on a piece. We can use it to check the squareness of the piece, to draw a layout line that is square to the piece. This is edge, like so. We can also use these in a vertical orientation. We're not going to get quite as good because we're going to have a little bit of a space there, but that's the basic use of these squares in a marking standpoint. So the next unit we're going to look at is what's known as a combination square. And depending on the industry, these will get different names. But combination square, some people call them speed squares. There are a variety of different names depending on whether you're in construction or machining and so on and so forth. So this is simply a ruler. You've probably seen these out there before. A ruler that can slide back and forth with a head. Now the head can measure both 90 degrees as well as 45-degree angles. So if we wanted to mark a 45-degree angle, we could do so on either side here. Or if we wanted to mark a 90-degree, we could do so as well. Another nice use of these, and it's going to be still a fairly rough measurement, is, let's say I've just set that to 1 inch. And I can take and drag this along and make a scribe mark a certain distance along in that way, or if I just simply want to mark in from both edges the same distance, I can do that. Now quality on these, this is actually one that I got fairly cheap, and these will often come in sets with multiple heads, so the square head, a center finder head, and a protractor head. This one I purchased from Taylor Toolworks on eBay. They sell these at roughly half the cost or less, and they're very good quality because they have minor blemishes on them. So they either got scratched or some discoloring from the factory, but otherwise they are just as good as new. They're still just as accurate. They're still fully functional. There's no problems with them. Now if you buy a really cheap square, what you're going to find is that it's not going to slide very well. This is going to hitch and catch and cause you some annoyance. So definitely look into Taylor Toolworks. I have a idea that they probably manufacture for some of the other brand names in the US that cost considerably more. than what these guys sell for. Another nice little thing on these is they usually have a scribe built in that people usually lose, but it's there. And then this one also has a level, as you can see, just a small bubble level. Now those were the traditional squares. Now let's take a look at what I'm going to call some non-traditional squares, but are still very useful for marking and layout. We have here, these are parallels. This is a parallel for a full-size lathe. This is a parallel for the Sherline lathe they manufacture. These are specific height, so a specific thickness. They'll usually come in sets of multiple thicknesses. So here are a few other thicknesses that come in the Sherline set. And these will give you a way to do an accurate line, a specific height off of a surface without using a surface gauge and being able to do it very quickly and easily. Same thing applies for the full-size ones, although obviously it's going to be thicker. These, if you get a cheap set of these, it's probably still going to be useful. I would probably get the smallest set of full-size you could get, but they're going to be useful for step-up blocks and things along those lines. And then this is a traditional 1, 2, 3 block. They do make these in different sizes, so 1, 2, 3, and I believe you can get 2, 4, 6, and different increments like that. This measurement is 1 inch. This measurement is 2 inches. This measurement is 3 inches. These are usually certified to some level as to the squareness of the edges, so you can use them as a square, whether in setup and marking, and then you can also use them just as a very, very quick way to scribe a common size. So in this case, 1 inch, or depending on some of the smaller parallels that you may have with the Sherline, whatever their height may be, you can scribe a line there as well. So don't discount some of these other items that are not traditional squares, but can be used for the same purpose. And then last are center finders. So center finders come in a variety of shapes and sizes. This one's designed more for woodworking, but we can use it with metal as well. It's just not going to give us as precise a measurement necessarily. And the idea here is you'll take these, and I'm actually just going to use a marker for contrast. Mark the piece like so, rotate it, mark it again, and then you can rotate it as many times as you want. Usually 2 is sufficient, but you can keep going. Obviously one of those there, I did not have it fully seated. Also, using a marker, I'm adding the thickness of the marker to this measurement. So not always the best. Better to use layout die and scribe it to get the most accurate measurement. But this will allow us to get a close area here to make a center drill hole. Again, not precision, but just a quick visual check there. So with these combination squares, depending on if you purchased a full set or not, you'll get the same abilities, but more targeted towards metalwork. Now this can be used for woodwork as well, obviously, and then we can just scribe a line. Now this is going to be much more precise than a marker or pencil, and there we get an X that may be hard to pick up on the camera, but there is definitely a visible X there, or again, if you put layout die on here first, then that would be more visible. So that's it for squares and center finders. There are a variety of other squares out there. I've just showed you a couple of the more common ones. You can get some that are solid steel, that are not a pressed blade, like these. Some of these will come in different thicknesses. As you can see, the Brown and Sharp's a little bit thinner compared to the Grizzly is a bit beefier. A lot of that's just personal preference, what you're trying to use it for, so on and so forth. You can get double squares, you can get all kinds of different varieties. So